Welcome back for our third segment here on February 18th, 2012 of Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small, co-host Paul Ogden. Hi, Paul. We are coming to you from Big Hat Books in Broad Ripple, Indiana, 6510 Cornell Avenue, right next to the Monon Trail. It used to be that like you would get directions on a map or something, Google it, you'll find out where it is. It's right next to the Monon Trail. It's like a green trail in Indianapolis. And we want to welcome our audience here today. We've got the largest audience we've drawn so far. We are, like I said, Big Hat Books has an excellent selection of books. They've got a novel, Crime Pays, about a Ponzi scheme in the 1960s.
Who wrote that?
I did. They've also, and I'm sorry, I bashed Mitch Daniels in the first two segments. This is one of the books that they have downstairs for sale, Keeping the Republic. And it's by Mitch Daniels, who's in his last year as governor of the state of Indiana. And I think it's mistitled because I don't think it's Keeping the Republic. I think it's like Leasing the Republic, or
he can never get through it. He keeps saying he's going to apologize.
I thought I was making up.
He never gets through it.
I'm sorry. Okay. Now, Paul, last week you were bashing the libertarians.
I was not. First of all, I have many libertarian friends. I point that out. I consider myself to be a libertarian, leaning Republican. As I said, I've been to many libertarian meetings, and I certainly respect them for their views. But I was making the point last week, and I made this point in my blog, that the libertarians would have more of an impact if they worked within the two parties. And I know Evan's heard that before, but let me finish. And I have an example. Like them or not, the Tea Party people have made a major impact in the Republican Party. They are players in the Republican Party. The Libertarian, there is a sizable segment of the GOP that is Libertarian leaning, and you are, and that percent is actually increasing. You're seeing Ron Paul doing a lot better than he did 4 years ago, and I can see that trend continuing. People are upset about things like the war on drugs. There's a lot of Republicans that don't like the war on drugs, and
we lost. Anyways, they lost the war.
Well, and that may be for another. Actually, I think we have covered that. But anyway, my point is the Libertarians could have more of an impact if they work within the Republican Party. What I saw with Ed Coleman and the organization he had, enthusiastic volunteers, he could go into the GOP. You guys could go into the GOP and take over a sizable segment of that. You would be more of a player. That's my spiel, and I didn't mean to put libertarians down, but I think they would have more of an impact within the system. Most, I think, would gravitate towards the Republican Party, but not all of them.
Within the system?
Within the two parties. I'm sorry. I know you don't like that.
It seems very logical on its base.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that you're forgetting, and Ed Coleman is the perfect example. Why did he become a libertarian? Because he could not work within the Republican system anymore. This is all public. During caucus meetings, they would have the Republican city county councilors would sit in the room, and they would talk about how they're going to vote, what they think about this amendment or bill or a resolution that's coming up in the council to vote on. And there would be some dissent, and then it would be told, but this is how you're going to vote. We vote as a party.
And he should say no.
And he said no. And what happened? He lost any of his committee chairs, any of his position on the committee.
But he lost that
them all
by becoming a libertarian.
No, they were removed before he became a libertarian. He started to lose his position. He started to be gavelled down whenever he would speak. So what did he do? He said, you know what? Why am I a member of this party when my own party is going against our own principles?
Okay.
And then realizing that he actually aligned more with the other party. Now, my personal experience is I've worked in professional politics for over 15 years, and I mainly worked with Republicans. The problem is that you have somebody who's libertarian leaning or small L libertarian. That's great, but when they get into office, they typically do whatever the party faithful want them to do. And with the Tea Party, another great example, the Tea Party has a great force, and they're working within the Republican Party, and they've gotten some strong, liberty, Constitution defenders in there. Got them elected to Congress. And if you look at the successes after those people were elected, there's no difference. It's still people who voted for the Section 1031 of the 2012 National Defense Authorization. It's still people who are stripping our constitutional rights. So they look at it and they really haven't made an impact.
So if we go back to the idea of having, and I think Paul's going at a point of working locally. That if you work the parties locally and you have a presence, and I think last week I was talking about working the polls and having people work there as inspectors and stuff.
Right.
That there's the presence there. And Tim, do you think that that's important for alternative parties to make their presence known on that level, so people when they're going in to vote?
Well, you do know you can't do that, right? As a minor party, you only get 2 options within the poll: a watcher and an outside poll worker.
Great.
That's all you get.
Great.
And even then, they strip watchers quite often if they're watcher lists.
I volunteer as an inspector quite a bit for the local elections.
Because they're short of people.
Right. Yeah, and you know, the county's Bev White, she prefers, you know, getting people that's coming into her and working direct for her rather than coming, you know, to represent one party or the other. So I don't think that really makes a big difference at, you know, the poll workers sitting there. You have some that are a Democrat and you have a Republican, but that doesn't really affect the way people are going to vote at once you're through the chute.
I don't think that, my point wasn't that it's going to affect how they vote through the chute. It's going to affect them not on this election or maybe the next, but that if every year they're going to the polls to vote, and there are these alternative parties there, and it's not just R or D, then they're sensing that that party is a legitimate presence.
And
that's
more.
Yeah, and as far as the position of the third party, that usually is taking people that are disgruntled with the way things are going right now. So they go with the third party, and then that increases pressure amongst the Democrats and the Republicans to satisfy whatever that need is that's creating the pressure. And so that was the traditional role of the Socialist Party back in the early 20th century, is getting social reforms put into place. And, you know, the Libertarians, they're now, you know, pushing a lot of independence and stuff, and you see that creating influence among the Republicans right now. And actually, you could sit there and say that the Libertarian Party is what inspired the Tea Party movement within the Republican Party.
That, but they only one step. They don't follow all the steps there. But I think what you're actually saying is that when we're walking into the polling booth, into the chute, it's seeing the names on the ballot. So you're talking about quantity of names on the ballot, which is a discussion within the Libertarian Party of, do we have a candidate for every position on the ballot, or do we focus on 2 or 3 really exceptional, high-value candidates?
And I'm saying a little bit of both. But I'm saying, especially if you have somebody working at the polls, and even if all you can do is a watcher, because I know in '64 Goldwater had watchers at the polls.
Right.
If they're only there in a limited capacity, I don't care. You have the party every place, and people get this sense that there's a continuity and a drive, so that they're going to be there, and it's not something that's a one issue for this campaign or a disgruntlement. 1, 2, you know, you're making a point on the right wing. Where is it on the left? I mean, the issues that people are upset about, and I think you're beginning to see it right now on birth control, when they were framing the issue as being one of a woman's right to an abortion. That was something that was very, very heated and skewed. When it's birth control, like 95% of people don't.
Are we really going to get into this issue?
No, not this issue.
Take over another program.
Not this issue, but I'm talking about how it's affected the way in which the parties have responded and how the elements within those parties have responded. So when you're talking about...
I think on the left, the Occupy Wall Street movement has created a lot of dialogue that's pushing towards the left. And now you look at even like Newt Gingrich. I don't want to look. He was starting to get behind and the first thing he did is he came out with a very populist language that you could say was socialist inspired.
Well,
So
one of the things
there is a lot of elements on the left side that draw even Republicans over that way when they need the votes.
One of the things that happened with that helps minor parties in that instance of being around and being on the
Let's
ballot.
call them alternative.
I actually prefer the phrase minor party because you have the major party, which is actually how it's written in the law.
That's
and then the
statutory
minor party,
here.
and a third party is like it's the least better option. It's the third date choice. Minor party signifies that we just don't have the same resources as one of the top tier major parties. So I prefer minor party. But one of the things that happens when an issue happens like birth control or the Occupy movement is we as a minor party have better local activist training. Because our people believe, when you become a libertarian, you believe that. When you become a Republican, it may be because your parents were Republicans or because you agree with one candidate or another. But when you become a socialist or a libertarian or any other minor party, it is because that is who you are. That is your principle. So you become well educated in the principles and thoughts and ideas of that party and that movement. So when the Occupy movement popped up, and everybody was saying to these kids, get a job, and they were pointing out the fact that these kids were using their iPhones and screaming about, corporations. We stepped in, and I actually met in my office with 25 members of the Indianapolis Occupy movement at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we sat and we talked. And I said, is your problem capitalism or is your problem corporatism? Is it the fact that these businesses have ingrained themselves in our government and they're buying and paying for their own rules and regulations that protect them without you being able to have a say? Or is it the fact that these companies exist? Which is it? And we had a very great conversation. And nothing that a Republican would want to do.
No, they're not going to do that, but that gets in, it's two-pronged then. Two things I want to raise. One is that, in fact, one of the major issues of the Occupy movement was student debt from having gone to college and possibly even graduate school. So them, the criticism that they should go out and get a job, many of them have been trying to, and found it difficult. But secondly, it gets back to something you were saying, someone was saying a while ago, about how, I think it was, Evan, you were saying about we shouldn't have the single ballot like Indiana has, and the state senator Delph had proposed that we change that so that the voters can go in there and think. How many voters do you think? I mean, how many voters do you think are voting because I'm a Republican and I'm a Giants fan?
Well, Marion County, in the 2011 election, there were 118, was it 118, is that right? Or was it 180 votes cast in the county election?
118 or 118,000?
118,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And
I was 118.
111 of them were straight ticket voting.
Oh, I don't think it's.
Or I think it was 180, and it was 118 were straight ticket voting. It was over 100,000 votes out of less than 200,000 votes were straight ticket voting.
You're talking about people who went and checked a Republican box or Democratic box, or people
Or
who did it at the top?
The one check at the
People did
top.
at the top.
Oh,
the straight ticket voting. It was over 100,000, and it was less than a 200,000 election. It was over 60% of the election was straight ticket voting.
Let's get back to this on our
Which is historic.
our
It
next
happens every year.
on our next segment. We'll be right back. Thank you.